Hello everybody. Today in this video we will going to know the built-in data type present in the Python. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe and like our Facebook page, and you can also visit our website, that is pycyber.com. Let's see what are the built-in data types present in Python. I have categorize this like numeric types, sequence types, text sequence type, binary sequence types, set types, and mapping types. In the numeric types, there are three data types in Python. One is integer, floating, and complex. Int class represents the integer data type in Python, while float class represents the decimal or floating numbers, and complex describe the complex, mathematical complex numbers. In the sequence type, there are list, tuple, and range. In text sequence type, str, that is a string. In binary sequence type, there is bytes, bytearray, and Memoryview. And in set types, there are two data types, that is set and Frozenset. And in mapping types, there are dict. All these data types are built-in data types in Python. Let's see one by one and try to understand how the data types are work. For the first one, that is numeric type, that is int. In Python, int is representing the mathematical integer numbers. As I previously told, that int class representing the integer numbers that is on the mathematical. And what is the integer number? An integer is a positive or negative whole number without decimal of limitless length. That means from negative infinite to positive infinite, every numbers, those are whole numbers, every whole numbers are called integer numbers. When we assign a integer number into a Python variable in this statement x equals to 5, that means Python supports dynamic data type, so we don't have to declare the data type for a variable. When we write x equals to 5, that means we are assigning 5 into the variable x. But in every programming language, when we take a variable, that variable have some data types. So Python automatically assign the integer data type to the variable x because of this value, that is 5. That's a integer number. Similarly, y equals to 100. Here in y, the value will be 100 as an integer number. We can verify the data type of any object in Python by using a function that is called type. Here we already define x and another variable y. If I want to check x represents for what, like x represents which data type, it's a integer or a floating or a complex data type, then we have to just call type method and pass the x onto this type method, and it will show the class name that this variable belongs to. Similarly, when we check the type of y, we are getting class int. Moving on to the next one, that is numeric type, that is float. That means floating numbers, or we can say mathematically decimal numbers. The float type in Python represents the floating point numbers, and float is used to represent real numbers and is written with a decimal point dividing the integer and fractional part. Like for example 97.98. This has a decimal part and the fractional part is 98. So here is integer part, that is 97, and the fractional part, that is 98. So this number is a real number, or we can say decimal numbers, and in Pythonic way, or it's in programming languages, it calls floating numbers. And Python has inbuilt float class to represent floating numbers. As we assign x a integer number in our previous example, the value is 5, so the data type automatically set to int. Now when we assign x the value 97.98, at the time that type of this variable that goes to floating number. So moving on to the next, in numeric type, that is complex. Complex numbers are an extension of the familiar real number systems in which all numbers are expressed as a sum of a real part and an imaginary part. Imaginary numbers are real multiples of the imaginary unit, that is the sequence root of -1. The imaginary part is written with a j suffix. For example, we have a real part that is 3 and the imaginary part that is 1. So we write it as a 3 plus 1j. For example, in this example, like if we want to create complex numbers in as a Python variable, we can do in two different way. Like first one is like this one, x equals to, we call the function complex and pass the real number part and the imaginary number part. So it takes two parameters when we call complex. First one is the real number and second one is the part of the imaginary one. When we print this variable that is x, it will show us like 1 plus 2j, where 1 is real one and 2 is for the imaginary part, and we use j suffix to represent the imaginary part. That's why it's 1 plus 2j. Another way to assign complex number into a variable is like y equals to 2 plus 7j. So in the first one, like complex function is called to create a complex data type, and in the second one, the value that is 2 plus 7j is assigned to variable y, and that's also create complex data type variables. Moving on to the next one, that is for the sequence types. The first one is list, and a list is a data structure in Python that is a mutable. That means we can change the value after creating that variable or creating that list. So it's ordered sequence of elements. That means when we added values to this, the values or the elements are in the ordered way, so it does not change their positions. Each element or value that is inside of a list is called an item. We can say sometimes we can say elements or as well as item also. So in our example here, L equals to, there is a square bracket and inside that square bracket 1 comma 2. That means we are creating a list with two items or two elements, that is 1 and 2, and the position that is 1 that's on the 0th index and 2 that is on the first index. It will not going to change their positions because it's ordered sequence, so it's maintain the order of the items. Now if we print L, we can see the output that is a list 1 comma 2 and having two elements 1 and 2. If we check the type of this variable that is L, we can see that it belongs from list class. Here is one more interesting things, that we can convert a string into a list. In this example, L1 equals to list of hello. Here hello is a string because string is a I can say sequence data type or iterable data type. That's why it creates a list with every element that is present on the sequence. So in Python, string is similar like an array. That means string is a sequence of characters. That's why HELLO. There are 5 characters, and using these 5 characters we are getting this string hello. So when we convert this string into a list, it's taking every element, that means every character as an element of this list. So when I print L1, we are getting HELLO as a different element or item into the list. Moving on to the next, that is tuple. So a tuple is a collection of Python objects separated by commas. Tuple is similar to a list in terms of indexing, nested objects and repetition, but a tuple is immutable unlike lists which are mutable. We know that in a list, if we create a list, we can change that list. That means we can change the value of a positions item. We can add elements onto that list. We can delete elements onto that list. But for a tuple, once we create a tuple, we can't change the tuple. That's why it's called immutable. We can't change. Other than that, tuple and lists are most like same. In this example, we take 1, 2 and 3 as value of a tuple, and that contains 3 elements 1, 2, 3, and if we want to change these values, we can't because it's immutable. So tuple follows immutable property. Moving on to the next, that is type range. Sequence type, that's range. This is very interesting one, the range one. So the range function generates a sequence type object in Python. This is by default started from numeric 0 and increased by 1 and stopped before the specified number. For example, if we take a range, like if we call range function with passing values 4, it will generate the sequence 0, 1, 2, 3. As in the statement, because range start from 0 and it increased the values by 1. So first element is 0, it's increased the value by 1, that means 0 plus 1. That's the next element we are getting, that is 1. So after that next element, 1 plus 1, that is we are getting 2, and next element, that is 3, and the next element that we are getting 3 plus 1, that is 4, but we have set the stop value of 4, so it's not include 4, it's exclude 4. So when it's reached to 4, it will just stop before writing that 4 onto the sequence. The syntax like range, start, stop and step. Here the start and the step both are optional, but the stop, that is mandatory one. In the parameter start must be integer number from where to start. Default is 0. If we are not passing any values to this, it will take by default 0. But if we want to pass something, that we can. I will going into this more detail on a separate video. In this video, we will going to just trying to understand what are different kind of inbuilt data types into Python. Moving on to the next, that is step must be an integer number which represents the increment or decrement of the next sequence number. Default is 1. As you know, as in the statement, we see that default number is 1 for the step, but it can be negative numbers also to decrease, and it will be a positive number for increase, and all these numbers that is passed to range, that must be integer. It's not supporting the floating numbers and other any data types. So next one is the stop, that's must be an integer again, which is specified at which positions to stop. This parameter must be passed while calling the range function, so it will stop when we reach that number. Moving to the next, that is str. String literals can be enclosed by either double or single quotes. That is, we can represent a string by enclosing with single quote or double quote. Although single quotes are more commonly used, the maximum uses between these two is single quote one. Backslash space works the usual way within both single and double quotes literals. Like in this example, that is s equals to hello / world in the next line. So here we used this backslash escape, and that's work for single quote as well as double quote also. A double quoted string literal can contain single quotes without any first. That is, for example, I don't do it. So this I don't do it, this string enclosed by double quote, into this string we use a single quote over here, so it will not going to create any problem. Similarly, if we enclosing the string with a single quote, then in the middle of that we can use double quote. That will also not going to create any problem. If we want to use single quote as well as double quote into our string literals, at that time we can use triple quotes or triple single quotes. That means triple double quotes or triple single quotes, as well as this triple double quote or single quote that is also used to write multi-line text also. So more details onto the string, that will be, I will create a separate video for especially onto this string, where I will go with more exploring more string things, as well as we're going to see what are the inbuilt methods that string class provide to us, and how to working with strings and manipulate data of the string. Moving on to the next data type, that is for binary sequence type, that is bytes. Byte objects are immutable sequence of single bytes. That means once we create a bytes object, we cannot change the value of that object. Since many major binary protocols are based on the ASCII text encoding, bytes object offer several methods that are only valid when working with ASCII compatible data and are closely related to string objects in a variety of other ways. So like if some data that are not using ASCII text encoding, that's not available, the ASCII text encoding, then we are using something else, then maybe some of the functionalities of functions will not work of that bytes object. So firstly, the syntax for bytes literals is largely the same as that for string literals, except that a B prefix is added. So the syntax we used in the string that are same on the bytes. For example, we use here the single quotes but with a prefix B. So it start with B, then within single quote still allowed embedded double quotes. So here we can see the exact example where within a single quote inside we are using the double quotes in that string, but this one is a bytes. So in the double quotes with a prefix B and in triple quotes with a prefix B. So this is almost similar like a string, but the data type that is bytes, that is binary strings. Next onto bytes array. So byte array objects are mutable counterpart to bytes objects. So we know that bytes object are immutable. We can't change once we create bytes, but similarly byte array, when we create an byte array, we can change the value of that byte array. That means after creating this empty instance byte array, we can add something onto that array. We can update that, but in bytes we can't update that. So this is the main difference between bytes and byte array. That's similar like list and tuple. So in tuple we can't change the values once we create it, but in the list after creating we can update and we can add some elements onto that list. Similarly here bytes are not changeable and byte array that are changeable. So here are some methods that in this one it will only calling the byte array, it will create an empty instance of byte array object. Like if I created a byte array 10, it will create a 0 field instance with the 10 length 10. Even we can create byte array object from a sequence object. For example, we are using here range 20. Copying existing binary data via the buffer protocol, we can do that directly by putting this byte array data and pass it to byte array function. As byte array objects are mutable, this supports the mutable sequence operations in addition to the common bytes. So what are the operations that can be performed onto the mutable objects? That allows for byte array objects. Moving on to that next, that is Memoryview. So Memoryview objects allows Python code to access the internal data of an object that supports the buffer protocol without copying. Create a Memoryview that references obj, and that object, that is obj, must support the buffer protocol. Built-in object that supports the buffer protocol include bytes and byte array. A Memoryview supports slicing as well as indexing to export its data. One-dimensional slicing will result in a subview. So here in this example we can see that we have created a Memoryview from a bytes object, that is v equals to Memoryview v within the quotation a b c e f g. Here we can find the value of index, that is v1, and we are getting the value that is 98 because it does not copy the data. Memoryview never copies the data. What Memoryview does, Memoryview refers that particular object. That means when we create variable v, this variable v is referring to this bytes object, that is b a b c e f g, this byte object. So when we trying to access v of index 1, that means we are getting this position, index value position 1, and we can see that here is b, but the value that is printing, that's the ASCII value of v, that is 98. And when we are accessing v minus 1, that's we are getting 103. Similarly, when we using slice like Memoryview slicing, at that time that returns an Memoryview object instead of that values, but we can convert that onto a bytes or byte array and check the value of that Memoryview. So hopefully this helps you to understand. Now set type set. So what is set? A set is a collection of distinct elements of members. The elements that make up a set can be any kind of object like int, float, str, list, dict, instance of any class or a other set. For example, we are taking a set. So how to, like, in this we can see how we can create a set object in Python. So my underscore set equals to, within the curly braces we'll set the values with separated by comma, like 1, 3, 5, 2, 6. So like this example is a set of integers, contains only integer, but like we can see that here 1, 2, 3, 5, 2, we repeated that this value two times, but in a set that is collection of distinct elements, that means it will eliminate the duplicate values, that means 2. So when we print the value my set, it will show like 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, because set does not allow duplicate values. On the second example, we created a set with different data types. That is, first one we took hello, and second one is 1, that is hello is a string data type. That is, next one is 1, that is a integer data type. Next one is a tuple, that is with values 8, 4 and 5, and last one is 36.25, that's a floating number or real number. When we print this, we'll get a set like this: 1, hello, 36.25, 845. So it's not an ordered sequence, right? So as we see in the list, in tuple, in string, those are ordered sequence, right? But in the set does not maintain the order sequence. And set is a, like, set follows the mutable property. That means we can update the values of a set and we can add or remove items from it. So next is set type, that is Frozenset. Frozenset is like the immutable version of the set. So Frozenset is just an immutable version of a Python set object. While elements of a set can be modified at any time, elements of the Frozenset remain the same after creation. So once we create a Frozenset object, after that we can't modify that object. Like if we creating a empty Frozenset, that means we can't add any element onto this. Similarly, if we create, like we take a vowels tuple, we are creating a Frozenset object, that is fset, with this passing with these values, the vowels. When we print this, we can see that this is a Frozenset and the values are OUAEI. But this is also not maintaining the order of this tuple. This is for the Frozenset, and we are moving on to the next, that is mapping type, and that is dict. So it's very really it's amazing one. So we know in other programming language there are like associative array, and in Python that's dict is similar with associative array. So dictionaries are Python's implementation of a data structure that is more generally known as an associative array. A dictionary consists of a collection of key value pairs. Each key value pair maps the key to its associated value. You can define a dictionary by enclosing a comma-separated list of key value pairs in curly braces. A colon separated each key from its associated values. In example below, we can see that this D, this is just for a syntax one. This D equals to enclosed with curly braces, and we can take as many as we want key value pairs, and those key value pairs are mapped with colon, and all the key value pairs separated by commas like this. So this is on the dict one. So hopefully you understand all the inbuilt data types, and I will also going to create separate videos for everyone, like here. Like I'm going to create separate videos to numeric types, sequence types, text sequence type, binary sequence types, set types, as well as mapping types. So where we can see, we can explore more on numeric types, like after creating those variables, data types variables, what are the operations we can perform with those variables, and what are the additional things, or how we can solve some real life problems using those data types and variables. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to this channel if you are new to this video and have not subscribed yet. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon and enable the all notification. Please share this video with your friends and colleagues. If you enjoyed this video, we're going to come with more videos similar like this. Please visit our I will going to post our Facebook page link video description. Please visit our website and like our Facebook page. Thank you. We'll see you in the next video.